Many of the 20th century's titans of fashion had affiliations with Nazis, such as Coco Chanel, Hugo Boss, and the Louis Vuitton family. Maybe they were just trying to survive during troubling times, or maybe they were all terrible human beings. But today we're telling the story of fashion designer Christian Dior's badass French resistance hero's sister, Catherine Dior, who provided intelligence to the British forces prior to D-Day and refused to submit to the Nazis even after she was detained. If you clicked on this video, you're probably familiar with the atrocities committed during World War II. Be advised that this video may include topics related to violence and SA. Hi, hello, welcome back to Browser History, which is basically the culmination of random stuff I Google, usually pertaining to the history behind trendy and sometimes controversial topics. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is not the best today. I have a slight sore throat, but I really wanted to get this video out. I am forever a student of history, and being a military veteran myself, I'm fascinated with World War II. Just when I thought I knew all the dark conspiracies and obscure topics in regards to that era, I came across a book by Justine Picardy called Miss Dior, A Story of Courage and Couture. That's a catchy title. We'll mention Miss Picardy later in the video because many accounts come from her book. So my first thought was, did Christian Dior fight in the war, or did he just fund the resistance? Then I realized, no, it was his little sister, which is crazy because I can't believe I've never heard this story before. Catherine Dior was born in 1917 into a family of privilege, as her father was a wealthy manufacturer. However, her family was not immune to the traumas of the era, as her brother Raymond suffered from PTSD after serving in World War I, and her other brother Bernard battled schizophrenia. Moreover, the Wall Street crash wiped out her father's fortune, and Catherine spent a lonely adolescence with him on a farmhouse in Provence. In the 1930s, Catherine's world expanded when she went to live with her brother Christian, a then fashion illustrator. Despite the rising darkness and unease around Hitler's ascent, the siblings enjoyed a bohemian lifestyle, mingling with artists and intellectuals. They were both unconventional, with Christian being gay and Catherine having a married partner, Hervé de Chambéry, who introduced her to the resistance during World War II. I'm just going to pause the video right here real quick and apologize for any French words I'm going to mispronounce. I am of Cajun Creole descent, and though my great-grandparents spoke a form of bastardized French, I unfortunately do not. Now back to the story. Justine Picardy states, "She was young, and it's easy to find that courage when you're still young. She was clearly idealistic and believed in democracy and freedom. So Catherine was your typical young, enthusiastic, 20-something-year-old gal ready to find her place in the world." In her early 20s, Catherine Dior worked odd jobs such as being a shop girl and selling flowers. However, she became involved in the resistance and carried out her first underground task by purchasing a radio for her compatriots to listen to Charles de Gaulle's broadcast. Catherine used the apartment she shared with her brother Christian, who worked as a designer for Lucien Lelong, to hold meetings and provide intelligence to British forces for D-Day planning. Unfortunately, Catherine was arrested along with 26 others after being betrayed by a double agent. While in custody, she continued to resist by lying to her interrogators and refusing to break down. Catherine was taken to an apartment in Paris where she and the other women were subjected to brutal beatings and abuse. Although she rarely spoke of her experiences, it's believed that she had been left unable to have children due to the horrors she endured. Despite her arrest, Catherine and her fellow female detainees formed a bond and looked out for each other, creating a chosen family. Although Christian tried to use his connection to secure Catherine's release, he was unsuccessful. As a result, Catherine was sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp in northern Germany, within a month of her arrest. However, she refused to let Nazis break her spirit and carried out acts of resistance, such as purposefully making mistakes while working to break factory machines with her group of French women. Catherine was among the last detainees to leave Paris just days before the Germans surrendered to the Allied forces. So I think she's in like that last wave of people that were sent to the concentration camps, which I think is probably the reason why she survived. In 1945, Catherine was sent to a satellite camp in Markkleeberg, Germany, where she worked in an aviation factory. As the Germans were on the verge of surrendering, Catherine and her fellow detainees were evacuated from Leipzig. They were ordered to march despite being too sick to walk. Catherine was one of the lucky few who survived the ordeal, but we don't know how she managed to make it out alive. On April 21, 1945, Soviet troops liberated the camp, but there is evidence to suggest that some of these soldiers SA'd female prisoners of war, including Catherine. After the war, Catherine returned to Paris with her family. In a photograph taken that year, she's shown wearing a Free French uniform, but her face is gaunt and her eyes are haunted. Catherine rarely spoke of her experiences during the war, but it was clear that she had suffered unimaginable trauma. When Christian went to pick her up from the train station, he was unable to recognize his own sister. Despite being liberated from the concentration camp, Catherine suffered from various physical and mental health issues for the rest of her life. Her injuries included hip, back, and feet injuries, along with chronic arthritis, rheumatism, and kidney problems. In addition to physical scars, she also bore the unseen ones, such as insomnia, nightmares, memory loss, anxiety, and depression. Like many Holocaust survivors, she rarely spoke of her experiences and developed a need for isolation. Despite these challenges, Catherine persevered and reunited with her lover, Hervé, whom she remained devoted to until his death in 1989. She pursued a career as a florist in the flower district of Paris and lived with her brother Christian, who was relieved by her safe return and began planning his own career as a designer. It wasn't until her return that he showed any ambitions to set up a couture house of his own, Picardy said. She's a flower woman upon her return, and what becomes known as the Dior New Look is clothes for flower women. In 1947, Christian Dior presented his first collection called The New Look, which was a departure from the pragmatic and militaristic fashion of the time. It featured long hemlines, tiny waists, and corsetry, and was a romantic and nostalgic line of clothing. Despite the fact that many people were still using wartime clothing rations, the collection was a massive success and made the 42-year-old designer a superstar. However, some people protested against it, with Americans picketing outside his hotel room during his first tour of the U.S. Some felt that it was inappropriate to celebrate or indulge in fashion after the war. Justine also states, "Perhaps it's only when you know and have experienced the true meaning of darkness that the light becomes all the more miraculous, to be cherished and celebrated." Christian Dior named his iconic perfume, which still exists today, after his sister and his inspiration. The fragrance known as Miss Dior is a floral scent that Christian intended to be the scent of love. Although Catherine may have been the inspiration for Christian, she was not a fashion enthusiast. She supported her brother and wore some of his designs, but preferred simple designs that allowed her to move and work in her garden. In 1952, while her brother was riding the wave of fashion superstardom, Catherine testified in a trial against 14 individuals who tortured her in the Parisian Gestapo office. This must have been incredibly difficult for her. I really hope they fried those assholes. When Christian died suddenly from a heart attack at the age of 52 in 1957, he left his estate to Catherine and a close friend, Raymond Zenacker. He also named Catherine as his moral heir, responsible for upholding the good name of his company. Catherine was put to the test when her niece, Françoise Dior, who Picardy suggests in her book may never have even met Catherine, came out as a neo-Nazi and married far-right figure Colin Jordan in 1963. Catherine, who refused to travel to Germany or use German products following her experience in the camps, released a statement denouncing her niece and asserting that Francois did not speak for the Dior label. Catherine and Hervé moved to southeastern France, where she lived until her death at age 91 in 2008. She once spoke to local school children about World War II, and a veteran approached her wanting to know more about her time in the resistance in camps. She simply said, "Aime la vie jeune homme," which means love life. So that's the life of Catherine Dior. Her story is interesting because it's sweet and sour, for lack of better terminology. I'm a very visual person, and I kind of really enjoy the juxtaposition of these people. Christian was this artist inspired by the darkness his sister experienced, yet Catherine was this strong-willed woman who experienced pure hell and didn't really revel in the glamour and success of her brother, even though she was basically his muse. I doubt Dior would be as successful had Christian not had an outlet or his desperation before and after Catherine's return. I hope you enjoyed this mix of fashion and tragedy. I'm a big fan of Catherine now. I hope you are too. Believe it or not, there's people in the world who don't believe the Holocaust actually happened, which is just so ridiculous. So it's important that we share stories like this so that they aren't forgotten. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you want, you can also let me know if there's any topics you'd like to hear about next. I really like lesser known conspiracies and stories with feminine undertones. That's my preference in case anyone was curious. Hopefully you guys start liking and subscribing to these videos more so that maybe one day I can buy a Dior bag and support our homie Christian. I've had my eye on this real snazzy one for the past few months, but they're just too expensive. I hope you all have a blessed and abundant day. Bye!